The Galactic Council had one unbreakable rule. No species below Class 4 civilization status could address the full assembly. Humanity was Class 2. They were permitted to observe. Nothing more. They were given seats at the back of the chamber, behind the pillars, where the acoustics were poor and the view was obstructed. The Council considered this generous. It began with a single, mistranslated word. The Drekari Collective had been negotiating peace with the Talshara Empire for 6 years. 6 years of fragile progress. 6 years of careful language. 6 years of two civilizations learning to trust each other one word at a time. Then the Council's automated translation system made an error. The Drekari word, Velkora, meant, "We surrender our weapons in trust." It was a sacred word, the highest possible act of vulnerability in Drekari culture. To speak it before a full assembly meant, "We believe in you so completely that we will lay down our defenses." The system translated it as, "We surrender." The Drekari ambassador Thalvex stood before 800 delegates and spoke the most courageous words in his species' history. The Council heard a defeated enemy asking for terms. Within 4 minutes, the Talshara fleet was mobilizing. The Drekari were scrambling to battle stations. 6 years of peace was evaporating in real time, and nobody in the chamber understood why. In the observer's gallery, seated behind a pillar with a partial view, a young human linguist named Dr. James Okafor watched it all happen. He had studied Drekari language and culture for 11 years. He had written his doctoral thesis on the sacred vocabulary of Drekari diplomacy. He was the only being in that building who understood exactly what had just occurred. He was Class 2. He was not permitted to speak. He stood up anyway. "Stop." The word came out louder than he intended. It cut across 800 conversations like a blade. Every head in the chamber turned. Council Chair Marandosk, a Talshara elder with 40 years of diplomatic experience, stared at the human standing behind a pillar in the observer's gallery. "You are not permitted to address this assembly," she said, her voice perfectly controlled. "Sit down." "Ambassador Thalvex didn't surrender," James said. "He proposed peace. You're about to start a war over a translation error." Silence. "Escort the human out," Dosk said. 2 security officers began moving toward the gallery. James spoke faster. "Velkora. That's the word he used. It doesn't mean surrender. It means we give you our weapons in trust. It's the highest honor a Drekari can offer. He was telling you he trusted you with his people's lives." The security officers reached him. Each took an arm. Across the chamber, Ambassador Thalvex had gone very still. He was staring at the human being dragged toward the exit. "Wait," Thalvex said. His voice was quiet. But in the silence of that chamber, it carried to every corner. "How does the human know that word?" James was not released. But he was not removed. He stood between 2 security officers while the chamber erupted. Delegates arguing. Translators consulting frantically. The Talshara fleet was still mobilizing. They had 17 minutes before the first ships reached the Drekari border. Thalvex crossed the chamber floor. He had never spoken directly to a human before. He stopped 3 feet away and studied James with ancient, unreadable eyes. "Say it again," he said quietly. "The word." "Velkora," James said. "Sacred surrender of arms in trust. Spoken only before witnesses. Binding for 100 years under Drekari law." Thalvex was silent for a long moment. "You know our law," he said. "I know your language. I know your history. I know that the last time that word was spoken was 400 years ago, when the Drekari ended their own civil war." James held his gaze. "You didn't come here to give up. You came here to end something." Something shifted in the ambassador's face, something old and exhausted and quietly desperate. "Yes," he said. "That is exactly why we came." He turned back to the chamber. "The human is correct," he announced. "I spoke Velcora. I spoke it deliberately. I spoke it because I believed this council was worthy of it." He paused. "I am no longer certain that belief was justified." The Tal Shara fleet stood down 11 minutes later. Council Chair Dosk summoned James privately afterward. She did not offer him a seat. "You violated 17 council protocols," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "You could be expelled from this station. Your species could lose observer status entirely." "Also, yes." She studied him. "Why did you do it?" James thought about the 11 years he had spent studying a language that nobody in power considered worth learning. He thought about the Drekari children who would have grown up in a war that started from a single wrong word. "Because I was the only one in that room who could stop it," he said. "And if I'd stayed quiet so I could keep my seat in the observer's gallery, I wouldn't have deserved the seat." Dosk was silent for a long time. "The Drekari ambassador has made a formal request," she said finally. "He wants you assigned as the permanent human liaison to the Drekari collective. I'm Class 2. I'm not eligible for—" "The council is reviewing that classification," she said. "It appears we have been measuring civilization by the wrong instruments." 3 months later, the Drekari Tal Shara peace accord was signed. James Okafor stood at the signing table, not behind a pillar, not in the observer's gallery. He stood at the front of the chamber as official witness, in a role that had never existed before, for a species that had never been permitted to hold it. Ambassador Thalvex signed his name and then looked up at James. "Velcora," he said softly. Only James would know what he meant. "We give you our trust." James nodded. "We'll keep it," he said. Humanity was reclassified to Class 4 6 months later, not because of warships, not because of territory or resources or military strength, because one human had learned a dead language on the off chance it might matter someday. And when it mattered, he stood up. That is the measure of civilization. They reclassified humanity on a Tuesday. No ceremony, no announcement. A simple administrative update pushed through the council database at 0300 station time when most delegates were asleep. James found out when his access card stopped being rejected at the main chamber doors. He stood in the corridor for a long moment, staring at the green light where there had always been red. Then he walked through. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, walking through those doors for the first time without an escort, without a chaperone, without someone watching to make sure the Class 2 didn't touch anything, he felt something closer to dread. Because James Okafor had spent 11 years studying languages nobody else considered worth learning. And in those 11 years, he had learned something that had nothing to do with linguistics. He had learned that the galaxy was full of conversations that the Council was not having. Not mistranslations, not errors, deliberate silences. He requested access to the full translation archive on his first day as official liaison. It was granted automatically now. Class 4 privileges. No review required. He sat down at the terminal at 800. He was still sitting there at midnight. By the third day, he had stopped sleeping entirely. By the end of the first week, his assistant, a young Tal Shara aide named Voss, found him surrounded by 17 years of archived council communications, his eyes red, his coffee untouched and cold. "Ambassador," Voss said carefully. It still felt strange using that title for a human. "When did you last eat?" "The Brekkai," James said, without looking up. "I'm sorry." "The Brekkai Confederation. They petitioned the Council for protected status 11 years ago." He pulled up a document. Their petition was filed, translated, and shelved. The automated system flagged their primary language as insufficient complexity for standard processing. Voss was quiet. "Do you know what insufficient complexity means in Council Translation Protocol?" James asked. "It means the system couldn't process it. It means the system didn't try. He turned to look at his aide. The Brekai language has no written form. It's entirely tonal. 47 distinct emotional frequencies embedded in every sentence. It is one of the most sophisticated communication systems I have ever encountered. He paused, and the Council's automated translator heard noise. What happened to the Brekai? James turned back to the screen. Their petition was shelved in the year 44 of the Council calendar, he said quietly. There is no further record of them after year 47. 3 years. The silence in the room was very loud. How many others? Voss asked. James gestured at the stacks of documents surrounding him. That's what I'm trying to find out. He found 9 in the first month. 9 species whose petitions had been lost, mistranslated, misfiled, or simply ignored because the automated system couldn't process their language and nobody had thought to assign a living translator. Some were still out there, diminished, isolated, cut off from galactic trade, galactic medicine, galactic law, surviving at the edges of a civilization they had tried to join and been quietly turned away from. Some were not. James compiled his report carefully. Every detail sourced, every gap documented, every silence named. He submitted it to Council Chair Dosk on a Friday morning and requested an emergency session. She called him to her office instead. Dosk looked older than she had 3 months ago. Or perhaps James was simply paying closer attention now. She read the report without speaking. All 147 pages of it. When she finished, she set it down and looked at him across her desk. You understand what this report does, she said. It documents a systemic failure that has existed for at least 4 decades, James said. Yes. It does more than that. She tapped the cover page. This report suggests that the Council's translation infrastructure has been making civilizational decisions, that we have been drawing the boundaries of the known galaxy, not by exploration or diplomacy, but by the limits of an automated system that nobody thought to audit. That is correct. If this becomes public... When? James said. Dosk looked at him sharply. When this becomes public, he continued, the Council will have a choice. Acknowledge the failure, commit to remediation, and begin the work of finding every species that fell through the gap, or deny it and wait for someone else to find what I've found. He met her gaze steadily. I am not the only linguist in the galaxy, Chair Dosk. I am simply the first one you gave archive access to. The silence stretched between them. What do you want? She asked. A division, James said. Funded, staffed, and independent. Dedicated to languages the automated system cannot process. Living translators, every unresolved petition is reviewed, every missing species investigated. That will take years. Some of them have been waiting for decades, James said. Years is an improvement. Dosk approved the division 6 weeks later. She did not make an announcement. She sent James a single message at 0600 on a Wednesday morning. Division approved. Staff it yourself. Don't make me regret this. He read it twice. Then he sent his first recruitment message to every linguistics department, xeno-language program, and cultural studies faculty in human space. We are looking for people who learned languages nobody else considered worth learning. If that is you, we need you here. Within 48 hours, he had 300 responses. Within a week, 1,200. The applications kept coming. It turned out humanity had a lot of people who had spent years studying things the galaxy had deemed insufficient. Tonal languages, gestural dialects, bioluminescent communication systems, subsonic frequencies, chemical speech, languages that no automated system could pass, languages that required something the algorithm would never have. Patience, curiosity, the belief that every voice was worth understanding. The first species they found was still out there, the Muir, a quiet, slow-moving civilization from the outer territories, whose language was expressed entirely through patterns of color change across their skin. Their petition had been filed 31 years ago. The translation system had returned a single line of output, visual noise. No linguistic content detected. A human researcher named Dr. Amara Singh had been studying Muir color language for 6 years as a personal project with no funding and no institutional support, simply because she found it beautiful. She was on the first shuttle out. She came back 4 months later with a full dictionary, a complete grammatical structure, and a message from the Muir Elder Council that she read aloud to the full assembly. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. They said, "We had begun to believe the galaxy had decided we did not exist. We are grateful to learn we were simply unheard. We have much to say. We hope you are ready to listen." The chamber was silent. Then Ambassador Thalvex began to applaud. One by one, the others joined him. James stood at the back of the chamber and watched. Voss appeared at his shoulder. 8 more petitions reviewed this week, he said quietly. 2 more species confirmed surviving. Coordinates confirmed for the Velshani. Dr. Okafor. The Velshani have been alone in their system for 22 years. No trade contact, no medical exchange. They have been surviving on closed-loop agriculture and hope. When can we reach them? Earliest departure, 48 hours. Book it. Voss hesitated. There's something else. Something in his aide's voice made James turn. Voss was holding a datapad carefully, the way people hold things that might break. We found a signal, he said, while the team was reviewing the Outer Territory archive. It wasn't filed as a petition. It wasn't filed as anything. It was buried in 40 years of unprocessed deep space communications, flagged as anomalous noise. James took the datapad. He looked at the signal pattern for a long time. His chest tightened. This isn't noise, he said. No, Voss agreed quietly. It isn't. This is a distress call. Yes. 40 years, James said, almost to himself. They've been broadcasting for 40 years. He looked up. Where is it coming from? Voss pulled up the coordinates. The location marker sat at the edge of the known galaxy. Beyond Council territory. Beyond any charted system. Beyond everything humanity or any other species had ever reached. That's impossible, James said. Nothing should be out there. Nothing we know of, Voss said. The signal pulsed on the screen. Patient, steady. 40 years of the same repeating message, sent into a silence that nobody had been listening to. Until now. James stared at the coordinates for a long time. Then he picked up his comm unit. Get me a ship, he said.